That's cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. That is good. Just give it a couple of minutes here. Okay, there's that. 701. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. I'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to come in. Are you messaging me? Okay. Let's see. Been 500. Let's see here. $500. Okay. See if that helps. Hello, hello. I'm just gonna give it a couple of minutes for people to come in. But if you feel okay with it, I would love to know who you are and where you're from. And I can go first. I'm India, and India from Indiana. I always get a little kick out of that. Keeps telling me that my bit rate is too high, but I thought I changed it. Yeah, I thought I changed it. But yeah, we'll get started soon. We're just gonna give people a couple of minutes to get in here. Don't understand though why it says that the bit rate is too high. It's a lot of troubleshooting. Let's see. Yeah, I changed it. So I don't know. Okay. But yes, but as you're coming in, if you don't mind putting down in the chat box who you are, where you're from, and I would also, love to know about your angel babies as well, if you feel comfortable sharing their names. of course, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I know how personable all of this is. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start sharing my slide. So my face is going to disappear for a bit. And, I won't be able to read the chat until afterwards. So if you have any questions, you can still feel free to put them in the chat box, and I can look at them after this presentation. So, okay. Alrighty. All right, so this is I'm a little nervous. This is my first webinar, but this is Keeping the Faith After Child Loss and How to Turn Your Grief into Beauty. All right, so tonight we're going to be going over 3 things. One, we're going to be going over how to keep the faith after loss. That's, why you're here. Number 2, we're going to be going over how to faith it until you see it. And then number 3, we're going to be discussing pregnancy after loss, because all of these things tie in together. All right, so you're probably wondering who I am, or maybe you're not, but I just want to give you a little intro. So I am India, and first and foremost, I am a daughter of Christ. Second, I am a wife, and then I am a mom. I have one son in heaven. His name is Troy. And I do have one son here on earth. His name is Silas. And, they are my pride and joy. And I love them both very, very much. I studied animal sciences. I thought that was a little neat thing to put in there. I don't hear a lot of people that study animal sciences. I hear a lot more like management and things like that. But I studied animal sciences because I love animals, and I wanted to be a vet when I grew up. And I eventually I realized that chemistry just did not work with me, right? I realized that chemistry didn't work with me, and then I also realized that I didn't think that I could handle the deaths that you deal with being a vet, right? I just didn't think that I could do that. So even though I studied animal sciences, I minored in creative writing, and then I eventually got a master's in accounting, just for funsies. Because I just like numbers, and I thought that it would be something that could help me in the long run. So I do that. And then I also have a podcast, the Angel Mom Glow podcast, that I started after I lost my son, Troy. I needed to get my feelings out, and I wanted to talk about them, so I started a podcast. Okay. So, my story. So, if you can see that little guy right there, that is Silas when he was young. I thought that was just a really cute picture of him in a basket. So, I had a chemical pregnancy. And if you don't know what that is, a chemical pregnancy is a pregnancy that happens extremely early on. And the only reason why I knew that I had it was because I tested as soon as I could. It's I don't know how else to phrase this, and I realize that it might sound bad. But when I had my chemical pregnancy, I wasn't necessarily trying to get pregnant. It wasn't something that we were thinking about, like, at all. And so when it happened, and when I was like, okay, we need to test as soon as possible, right? And so I got the positive test, And I went through like this range of emotions. I was scared, um, because it just wasn't something that was really on our radar. And I just was like, okay, my whole world is about to change. Like when you get that first test, when you get that first positive, um, like you start thinking about everything, the future, like what kind of baby are you going to have? Is it going to be a girl? Is it going to be a boy? And so I went through like this range of emotions, and it was like we told our family, because when you get a positive, you don't think that anything else is going to happen. And even though we know the statistics, I didn't think that that would be me. And so we told our family, and then the next day I started bleeding. And it was right around the time that I would have gotten my period. So technically, my period was late. So it was a chemical pregnancy, and that was rough. And it really helped us in that we realized that, we actually do want to be parents. And so we decided to actually try, to get pregnant. And so then I got pregnant with Troy. And Troy was amazing. Troy was very, very amazing. He was a very, to me, he was very rambunctious while he was in the womb. But I lost Troy at 26 weeks. So I was 6 months pregnant when I lost Troy. And I remember I was going in for just a routine doctor's appointment. And I felt like something was wrong, like even before the appointment. But I tried to convince myself that everything was fine, that it was just me overreacting because I was a new mom, and everything was fine. But I remember trying to joke with the doctor, because that's what I do. um, I try to make jokes to not deal with all of the negative emotions that I'm dealing with, right? So I tried to crack jokes with the doctor, even while she's trying to find a heartbeat. But I'm like, in my mind, like, she's gonna find it. She's gonna find this heartbeat. Um, and she didn't. And so she took me to get an ultrasound where they shared the news that he was gone. And that it was awful. I remember I had to leave that room. They let me go out the back way. But as soon as I opened up that door, there was a couple, and they were sitting there, and they were so excited for their ultrasound. And here I was, someone crying and going down the stairs. Um, and I just remember just being so, I like basically kind of like shut down. Even when I was at the hospital, I shut down. I I didn't know how to process what I was going through. And they were asking me all these questions, about how to, like, which funeral home I was going to choose, and if I was going to have this test done. And I just shut down. Um, and I ended up staying in the hospital a little bit longer because I got an infection. And honestly, I'm glad that I did get that infection, because it was right around that time that I started to, I guess, warm up to the fact that my son was here while he wasn't alive. He was here, because at first I didn't want to hold him because I thought it would hurt less, but it really didn't. So I'm glad that I got to stay an extra day with him. But leaving that hospital, um, that was rough, because the hospital was renovating, and I want to say that I received excellent care from my doctors. I know that's not always the case, but my doctors were amazing, and they were really thoughtful. and I'm very grateful for them for that. But they were renovating at the time, and so we had to leave Troy on someone's desk. And then we walked out of the hospital, and it was sunny in February, and it just felt like our whole world was like crashing down. But you could see that everybody was still going about their day. And I remember just not understanding why this happened, and I couldn't understand why it was my child that was taken. Because I would see, like I would get on like the news and stuff, and I would see these poor babies that had been abused and neglected, and I was like, why do families like those get to have children, but my son that I love was taken? And so I definitely went through a time where I struggled so hard with my faith. But honestly, it was only by going to God that I was able to get out of that grief stage. And there are always going to be little moments that you might have to check yourself. Things that happen that pop up over time. But for the most part, I was able to feel okay again. And so then, 5 months later, I got pregnant with Silas, my rainbow. And the doctor recommended 6 months, but we chose 5 because we felt like that was close enough. And I didn't think that I could handle if Silas was to be born in the same month that Troy was supposed to be born. So we did 5 months. And so I got pregnant with Silas, and I had him in April of 2019. So he's going to be turning 3 soon. And, you would think that I would have been more anxious, but I wasn't. And both pregnancies were for pretty much textbook. I did have more additional support when I was pregnant with Silas, just because of the loss of Troy. I did have stress tests, and they checked up on me more, and they made sure to check up on me during my 26th week. But everything was honestly, for the most part, pretty textbook. I was a little bit more sick in the beginning with Silas. But I wasn't ever afraid that I was going to lose him, because I just had this trust that I was going to be taking Silas home. And I have this scripture down here, Genesis 9:13 through 16, because I just love it so much. It is my favorite scripture. It says, "When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds. And I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again will the flood waters destroy all life. When I see the rainbow in the clouds, I will remember the eternal covenant between God and every living creature on earth." And I just love that so much, because we talk about having our rainbow baby, because, when you see a rainbow, it's always after a storm. It's always after some grieving period. And God is telling us, when you see that rainbow, He's saying that He remembers our covenant with us. And so when I see my son, I'm just reminded that God hasn't forgotten, and He hasn't forgotten any of us. And I just love this scripture so much. All right. So, how to keep the faith after loss. So, I have as the first thing is to seek Him. And I think that is the first thing you should be doing, is seeking God, because it might sound counterintuitive if you are just so upset and you just don't understand how this could happen to you. Why would you talk to Him? But honestly, it was my loss of Troy that actually brought me closer to God, because I was pretty lukewarm in my I won't even say I was lukewarm. I would say I was more cold in my walk with God, because it was more like I knew He existed. Um, I believed in Him, but I wasn't reading my Bible. I wasn't talking to Him. Um, I wasn't really going to church. It always felt like it was boring, to be honest. As a kid growing up, like, church felt boring, because it felt like it never ended. And I wasn't seeking Him. But when I lost Troy, I was like, well, hold on. My son, you know, was so loved, and he was taken from us. And I would see all these people that, you know, didn't appreciate the children that they had. And I just couldn't understand why, this happened. And so, because I was so upset, I actually, I just started, I was honest. I started telling them, I was like, I'm not happy with you right now. And, and that's okay, to say that, because He already knows. Like, he already knows that you're upset. But He tells us, to seek Him and to cast our burdens on Him. And I had to be reminded that He also knows what it's like. He lost His son when, Jesus died for our sins. He lost His son, and Jesus is obviously, in heaven with Him, but He knows. And so I had to be reminded of that. And that actually brought me closer to Him, because I start talking to Him. And the more I talked to Him, the more I developed a relationship, that he didn't seem like this angry God anymore. He seemed more like my father, and that someone that I could just be completely honest with, was freeing. And so the first thing you got to do is just seek Him. And I recommend doing that first thing in the morning if you can, because it really just starts off your day right. If you're able to at least read, a scripture or two, or just even spend like 5 minutes in silence with them, it really does start off that morning. And then number two is the journal, because you have to, you kind of have to think about what you're writing down. And so you're getting all of those emotions out. And I always say that you need to write what you're going through. You need to write it out so that you can be able to go back and see how far you've come. That, when you're feeling down, you can go back through those old journal notes, and then you can see, the promises that have been fulfilled. And you also want to make sure that you're getting these emotions out, because even though we do expect our family and friends to be there for us, they do have their own lives too. And it does get to a point where we can't always lash out. And while they might, be more forgiving of that in the beginning, eventually they don't want to be, lashed out at all the time, or feel like they have to walk on eggshells. And so it's better if you actually get those emotions out and deal with it, so that it's not bottled up. It's going to help you in the long run. And then you can, again, you can be able to look back and see how far you come. And so the number three is finding a community. So going back to your family and friends, we can't expect for them to be everything. And even, your partner, you can't expect for them to be everything for you. I think that it's important to have different friends, different communities, different, circles, to help you. Because, talking about, child loss or any kind of grief, it's hard. It's honestly hard. not just on you, but it could be hard on other people because they might not know how to respond. They might not understand that you just want somebody to listen. And sometimes, if we don't, this is one of those clubs that nobody really wants to be in, right? And so it might be difficult to take advice from someone who doesn't know what you're going through. Um, and so that can already put them at a disadvantage because you might be ready to discount anything that they have to say because they don't know what you're going through. And I mean, we don't want them to know what you're going through, right? We don't want them to experience that. So it's important to find a community that knows what you're going through and knows that, saying, we have those dreaded phrases that we hate, saying that everything happens for a reason. You want to go to a community that knows that you don't say that. You want to go to a community that is at a different stage than you too in their walk. And so they can offer guidance and say, well, this is what works for me. You can try it out and see if it works for you. And then you have other people that can chime in and help, right? And so it's very important that you are finding a community because while loss is something that's so intimate for us, it doesn't discriminate against anybody. And it's something that we kind of tend to be a little hush hush about in society. And that's a lot of families that are suffering alone and don't have any resources. So make sure that you are first seeking Him. Number two, you're journaling and getting those emotions out. And then number three, finding a community. All right, and so then I have here a little map. Faith it until you see it. So when you're starting out, you're very optimistic because you know the stats. Like everybody has heard the statistics of 1 in 4 women. Like we know it, but we never think that that's going to be us. And so when you start out, you're very optimistic. And even if you get like a negative test, your first go around, you're still a little optimistic because we're told that it can take time. We're told that you're not supposed to actually seek medical, intervention until you've been trying for at least a year. And even if you've had some chemical pregnancies, that it's okay. It's you're still optimistic, right? But then you start getting more tests, and they're negative. Or this is around the time that you've had some miscarriages, or you might have had some stillbirths, or even chemical pregnancies. And now you're just kind of feeling that weight that maybe there's something wrong with you. And so you're in this pit and you're kind of despairing and you don't know how to get out of it. And so right around the time you start climbing out of this pit, when you start getting hopeful again, is around the time when you start going to God and asking Him for help, because the only way you're going to get out of this pit is with His help. And so I say to faith it until you see it. Rather than saying fake it until you see it, I want you to faith it until you see it. And so that means acting as though it is already so. So I mean like taking your prenatals. I mean exercising, changing your diet. These are all things that I did after I lost Troy. I tried to immediately get pregnant again. And I will say that was definitely the grief. And I would get a positive, and then I would start bleeding. And so I got to the point where I was like, okay. I started, talking to God more and developing a relationship with Him. And I was like, I believe that this is going to happen for me. So I was like, I'm going to start acting as though it's already so. It doesn't mean that I was walking around telling people that I was pregnant, but I was taking prenatals. I was taking care of my body and my mental state. I was eating healthier, so I cut back on sugar. All of the things that you would do if you were already pregnant, I started doing before. And that's, not saying that, losing weight means that you're necessarily going to have an increase, in fertility. What it means is that I was taking care of my body because I wanted to give my son the best chance that he could, because I knew that pregnancies can be hard on the body. And so I wanted to make sure that we were good. And it helped to get my mind off of things too. And so then, we have spending time, with God. And these really go hand in hand. And so you're reading the Bible, and it's not also just reading the Bible, it's also studying the Bible, studying the Word, and then spending quiet time with Him. I don't know about you guys, but before, I would I would pray to God, and then I would just get up and leave and go do something else. Or I would, immediately get on my phone or watch like something on YouTube, right? I wasn't spending time with Him. So when you are going into your quiet area, wherever that might be. It might be a closet, your bathroom, your garage, wherever. Um, Make sure that you are taking a couple of minutes to just sit in silence and hear what he has to say. Just to soak it up. You don't want to just kind of give your request to him and then just run away. Um, you want to actually sit there, and it's helpful to also have that journal with you, so that if something does come to mind, if he downloads something to you or tells you something, you can write it down. You don't necessarily want to trust that your memory is going to keep it, but that's how, like, when you then start to see it in that natural, that's how I knew that I was pregnant way before I got a positive test. Like, even though I started testing as early as I could, um, and I was getting negatives. And then the closer we got to when my period would have been, that's when I got the positive. But I already knew. I just wanted to be able to, take that positive test to my husband and show him. Um, but I already knew, because I remember hearing God tell me that I was pregnant, and being so happy about it. And it's just a reminder that nothing is impossible for God. Just even if the doctor tells you that you can't have children because of X, Y, and Z, you know this is not to discount doctors, because I do believe that they are here to help us. But make sure you're taking that diagnosis that they give you back to God. Take it back to Him in your quiet time. And just make sure that even though they might say, hey, you can't get pregnant, or you're too old, or this, we've seen stories of like older people being able to carry kids to term. I mean, I've seen an article where a couple in their 70s had a baby. And so nothing is impossible. And and when you are faithing it until you see it, and you're doing all of these steps, you're going to be better equipped for when you do get pregnant, because you're already walking as though it is so. So then, we get into pregnancy after loss. And, statistically, moms are more anxious around this time, because, if you will, your rose colored glasses have been taken off. You now know that that 1 in 4 statistic is you, and so you don't have that same optimistic outlook that you did before. And this is for most moms, right? Because there's that additional layer of fear, and you might struggle to connect with the baby, because you think to yourself, maybe I need to just get past this milestone. For me, it was maybe I need to get past the 26-week mark, right? Whatever that milestone may have been, like when the loss occurred. A lot of moms struggle during a pregnancy after loss because they know what it's like. But if you are taking these steps and you're going to God and you're truly believing and giving it to Him, you're going to have an easier time. And that's not to say that, there won't be moments where you might see, like, a little bit of fear spike up every now and then. But it's more so about being intentional. And so if you're taking it back to Him, a lot of that weight is being taken off of you. And so we realize that there is no safe zone, right? That you don't need to wait until a certain period of time to celebrate your child. So I knew that I was pregnant with Silas before I got the positive test. And I did like the blood work and stuff with the doctor because I wanted them to be aware. And I think it was after I had my first ultrasound was when I announced it at work. And I remember my supervisor saying to me, she was like, "Wow, you're so brave. You're really going to announce that you're pregnant now? You're not going to wait?" And I was like, there's no safe zones. I had a stillbirth at 26 weeks. I was like, no, there are no safe zones. I'm going to announce it now because I'm happy and I want to celebrate, my son. And so you have this level of peace, when you have a stronger faith in God, because you know that He's going to keep His word. And while we might not always agree with His timing because we want it right now, but we know that if He put it in our hearts, that if we believe it, if we truly believe that He's going to do it, it's going to happen. It might not be next month, it might not even be in 3 months, but we know that it's going to happen for us because we have a faith in Him. We have faith in Him that it's going to happen. And then another thing to remember is that, it's a new life. Every pregnancy, every child is a new beginning. That, just because you may have gone through a loss or a couple of losses before, that doesn't mean that that's going to happen with this pregnancy. That you're going to drive yourself crazy if you're constantly thinking about all the things that could go wrong. And so really just make sure that you're taking all of your concerns back to God and, just being honest with Him and sitting there and, opening your ears and your eyes to receive what He has to say to you, because there truly is this level of peace that just comes from knowing that He said it's going to be okay. Like, I literally worked until the week of my induction, and I wasn't ever afraid that something was going to happen. That even when people tried to tell me all of their horror stories, I was never afraid. I knew that I was going to be delivering a healthy baby and that He was going to be coming home with us. And, now I have an almost 3-year-old that runs the house. And I just know that that's because I made sure that I was seeking God. That peace that I have was because I was seeking Him. All right. And so I thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. This was my first webinar, and this is where you can connect with me. I can leave it up for a little bit if you want to be able to take like a picture or a screenshot of it. But you are welcome to always, send me an email or a DM. I love interacting with other angel moms and just, giving some words of encouragement because sometimes you just need that. You don't necessarily, or, just listening. You don't necessarily need somebody to always tell you what you should be doing. Just someone who will just listen. And so um, I'm always available for that. And also, before I forget, the Angel Mom Glow app. It is completely free. Um, it's available on Apple, and it will be available on Google Play soon. We just have to make some updates to the app. It'll be back on Google Play, but it is a lifestyle app. It is designed just for lost moms. You'll get daily affirmations, monthly devotionals. We have monthly chit chats that we host on YouTube, and we make sure that they're unlisted so that you don't ever feel like there's a spotlight on you. So we have monthly chit chats, and we're going to be rolling out so much more with the app, and I'm really excited for just giving more support to my fellow lost moms. All right, so questions, if you have any. I'll go back to my face. So if you have any questions, you can just let me know in the chat box. My puppy is freaking out. And I'll just give you guys a couple of minutes. And if you don't have any questions, that's okay too. And I'm sorry if I talked really fast. I get excited to be able to just share resources because this is stuff that I wish that I had when I was, going through my grief. I wish that I had these kinds of resources. I was able to find like communities on Facebook, um, but it just wasn't always the same, I guess. And if there's anything that you would like me to go back over, I can totally do that. I don't mind. Alright. Alrighty, I'm not seeing any questions, but I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that you were able to get something out of this and that it truly blessed you. And I just wish you a great night and thanks for stopping by.